Thank you for your attention tonight. What we're here to talk about today is
Please.
the proposed bond issue that we have been considering, the council has been considering, general obligation bond to address certain infrastructure. We'll go through a little bit of history, so to recount the purpose for the proposed bond issue, and then move on to where we are today. So, I'll keep my historical notes as brief as possible. Okay, so first, one of the reasons that we're here is because of the strategic planning effort that the council went through within the past year and a half. As indicated, it was a long time coming. It was based upon several plans that were developed in order to advise the council as to what conditions were within the city, city's infrastructure, so on and so forth, operational, and then to bring those forward so the council could have a long or mid to long-term perspective on the condition of infrastructure and how to address those issues. So we reported those to the council on March 4th of 2015. If you look right under the last bullet point in the first column, you'll see all of the different things the council considered in looking at those major challenge areas. So there were several major challenge areas. Short-term or short MCA is the acronym, and they were the major challenge areas, both external and internal. You can read those. There were 7 of them or 6 of them that were looked at, identified by City Council, and which were transitioned, I guess, into being addressed with a capital bond. The first was deteriorating pavement conditions. We just earlier tonight talked about the condition of roads within the city of Moscow, aging downtown infrastructure, park development, and then internal, those that are secondary to use by the public, the deteriorating substandard police department building in a vulnerable, unsafe location. It's amazing how everything ties together. We were just talking tonight. I read in one of the letters that was sent in the last appeal hearing that the location of the department and its traffic circulation was somewhat sketch. Anyway, and I think everybody can agree with that. It's on a one-way street. It is in less than perfect condition, so on and so forth. And in a building that's been remodeled from one of its original uses as a creamery and used to have all of City Hall as well as the police department there prior to City Hall's movement into this building in the mid-90s. Inadequate fleet shop, park shop facilities, maintenance facility. We'll talk about that in a few moments. And then aging fire apparatus and replacement. Fire apparatus being longhand for fire trucks. So, in addressing those MCAs, we added one to that, and that was the recycling center yard waste drop-off relocation that was only secondarily impacted by the bond issue, which we'll get to in a moment. That location of the recycling center yard waste drop-off is at C and Jackson Street. So again, what caused us to approach the City Council with the alternative of a general obligation bond? The first is the limited revenues that are available to local government. As we've been talking about the last several council meetings, committee meetings, and virtually every meeting we have when the legislature is in session, the amount of revenue available to local government to meet infrastructure needs is less than adequate, as you can tell by the fact that our roads aren't in the best shape, some of our public infrastructure and undeveloped infrastructure is lagging behind. Streets and parks particularly. Streets and parks are both special revenue funds. Streets, there is some gas tax, some road and bridge tax that goes in. In addition, there's support from the general fund. Parks generally are developed with general fund monies. They do have special revenues from programs, but hardly ever are there any revenues that go toward development of parks except through what would be impact fees, which we have not adopted, or parkland dedication is how typically parks are developed. There's a property tax cap of 3% of the previous year's budget. Our current annual increase is $157,000 if the council were to take the full 3%. These are FY 2017 numbers. No opportunity for local option sales tax. When the council was approached with the idea of an infrastructure bond, general obligation bond or a loan is very structured. You set out how much funding you desire to meet your infrastructure needs, how long it will be structured, the interest rate that will be paid, so on and so forth. It has to be approved by the voters. It's 66 2/3%, commonly called the supermajority. So you would have to have 2/3 of your voters vote to approve that bond. It addresses, in this case, public facilities, equipment, and infrastructure. None of the proposals that would be addressed with the GO bond would be done for operations. Okay, so in the 2017 budget, we had several issues we brought before City Council. One was there was a feeling by the council that they wanted to limit a GO bond to no more than $10 million. So that was the amount that we looked at, and everything was based on estimates at that point. Maximum 10-year proposed term. That term was set up so that you would be able to utilize the funding, address certain infrastructure needs, and then in 10 years, if possible, if the council and the city have done a good job with meeting their obligations, that perhaps you could go out and ask the citizens for additional authority. Low bond rates still prevail in the marketplace. The low bond rates, low borrowing rates are at historic lows right now. So again, addressing the issues that you see below the last bullet point, the police department facility, fire trucks, park development, downtown improvements, pavement management, and a street facility. Now again, as the council approved us moving forward with that, these were all estimates, and we've been developing those estimates ever since. So this was the proposed timeline. In the summer, fall of 2016, we scoped proposals for those facilities and infrastructure, which was completed. In the winter of 2016, finalization of bond loan proposal for voter consideration. Bond counsel has been retained, as well as a financial advisor, and we'll talk a little bit about retaining them into a later bond issue as well. Then in the winter and spring, the public information process and going out and informing the public and requesting public feedback. And then, of course, May of 2017, the bond election. Again, it's a supermajority. We are only allowed to go out for bonds twice a year, May or November. So May is generally the best time to go out, so that's what we were focusing on. And that's what was reflected in the FY 2017 budget. So we developed, approached these issues by forming technical advisory teams to develop proposals for each of the areas. You can see all the technical advisory teams. We had a public relations, communication, finance, and planning, so on and so forth, so we could develop all of the aspects of a potential GO bond. And those technical advisory teams have been meeting, and several of them have completed their work. Several of them, or excuse me, a few of them, it's been determined that there was additional planning that needed to be done, and that is being pursued at this time as well. So what we're here to ask you tonight is, because of recent developments regarding availability of facilities, we're proposing that the bond election, instead of being held in May of 2017, that it be restructured so we pursue it or present it to council in the 2018 budget cycle, which would mean that a bond election would take place in May of 2018. We'll go through each of the factors that go into making that recommendation. The first is the police department facility. The first thing that was done is the Techno Advisory Committee surveyed potential available locations. I think Councilmember Weber and the mayor were here when the discussion of the joint law enforcement facility was looked at about 8 or 9 years ago. At that time, it was determined that the city needed a new police facility, hoped to partner with Latah County. One of the things that the city council made clear at that time, and was certainly supported by staff, especially the chief of police, was that the facility needed to be in relative central location to downtown. And that work, or that proposal, never came to fruition, and the need for a new police facility has continued. The recycling center located at C and Jackson, as indicated, is the yard waste drop-off is unsuitable for future recycling center operations. It's a it's not an optimal situation in the middle of summer. The current yard waste drop-off being in a residential area, it is somewhat pungent at certain times of the day, and going out onto Almond Street when there are people trying to back small trailers in there creates a potential dangerous situation. So it was determined in our MCAs, as you will recall, that the recycling center was ripe to be relocated and a new yard waste drop-off facility be developed. In fact, the Solid Waste Fund has been accumulating funds for just such a move over the past several years. So it appeared that that area where the recycling center is located today was an optimal location. There's not a lot of area in close proximity to downtown Moscow that would house a police facility. The area along A Street, there are a couple. The Dumas site was looked at. This site, there were several other sites. We were approached by real estate folks and property owners asking whether their site could be considered. Most of those were at the edge of the city or far removed from the central location.